My name is Linda, and for the last 12 to 15 years of my life, I have been up all night, not sleeping well, going out at 3 o'clock in the morning and lurking in alleys, talking to people that I would never talk to a day in my life, and jumping fences, doing everything I could to find my daughter. And my daughter was in and out of my life for 12 to 15 years. She was either in a rehab, she was using, and we didn't know where she was, or she was hiding out from us because she was getting ready to use. And that's been our pattern for the last 12 to 15 years. And I've used most of my life waiting up all night for her, staying awake at night. Every time my phone would beep, I would pick up my phone and look to see if it was her, going on her Facebook page and going all over the place to see if there was any activity or movement from her, or if anybody had heard from her, because all I wanted was to be safe and know that my daughter was going to be okay. My daughter was going to be well and be healthy. So this is a verse in the Bible that I've read many times, but I really didn't get like the gist of the verse. And it basically says, hope deferred makes the heart sick, but when the desire cometh, it's a tree of life. And it's in Proverbs 13:12. And you may say, well, what does that have to do with addiction or your daughter being out? My daughter, since about the age of 16 years old, my daughter has been in numerous treatment programs. Some long-term, most long-term. I think she had very few short-term treatment programs. But she'd been in many treatment programs. She'd been involved in Oxford House, the 12-step programs, aftercare. She'd been in counseling, and she'd been off and on of bipolar medication. So in the course of her addiction, she had 6 children. She lost all of her children one by one as they were born. Some never even left the hospital, and some were taken right from the hospital. And as a mother, what you want for your children when you look at them and you bring them home is you have this great hope in your heart that your kids are going to have this wonderful life, and they are going to be so much more better off than you are. They're going to have this wonderful spouse. They're going to enjoy parenting. They're going to buy a home together, maybe open a business, maybe have a profession, buy their first car, go outside with their children as holidays come, take them to trick-or-treating and take them to Christmas things, go through the headaches that we went through as a parent, like getting up with them at 3 o'clock in the morning and being sick, not wanting to eat foods because they're fussy and it's not macaroni and cheese and that's all they'll eat, losing their shoes in the morning, having to juggle your time when you are going to work and your kids can't find the backpacks or the shoes, paying bills, learning to be responsible, building a good credit score. You want your child to go through all these milestones. The milestones just don't start when the kids are little. You want them to go through them their whole life. Now, I have 2 other children, and I've got to watch both of them go through so many milestones, and both of them continue to just kind of go through the milestones and learn to be wiser, stronger, more loving, and more caring individuals and humans. With my daughter, at 15, she veered off on this path. And each and every episode of treatment, of counseling, new medication regimen, this hope stirred up in me that this horrible thing is over. No more pain. I'm not going to have to worry about her. I'm going to get to see her do the great things in life and do all the wonderful things that she wants to do and become the person that she wants to be. And shortly after, we had a treatment episode, or we had a new batch of medication, new counselor. We had something new that come in our life. The hope would flare up in me again. And shortly after that, my daughter would go right down that path again. Now, most of the time it started with her is that she would end up with a man someplace, or she usually held on to the same men for quite a while, and they were all toxic. But it would start with a man, or it would start with a friend that was wink wink in recovery, and it wasn't too long before she would just slip right back into it, and she never jumped into it. And a lot of people think, and I don't just see that with her, I just see that across the board. A lot of people think that a relapse means you just jump right into the deep water. And that's true sometimes. But more times it means that you start taking kratom. It means that you start taking a 5-hour energy drink. It means that you start taking Dexatrim, or you start drinking alcohol. It means that you start on something that is either store-bought or something that you consider that's not going to get you into trouble. And that's exactly where it starts. And it ends up very shortly, it ends up jumping into the deep water of addiction. And my daughter had this repetitive pattern of doing this. So over and over, we had our hope rise up, and then we had our hope deferred. And we continued to still. When she would go into treatment, it got harder and harder to have that hope, but I still managed to grab onto it. And it almost kind of reminds me of, like, if you're going to go, for example, early in my life, when I didn't quite have all of my finances in order, we had this stove in this house that we were renting. And I remember going in a few times to cook, and took the landlord a little bit to fix it. But I would go in to cook on the stove, and it was temperamental. On some days it would shock me, and it would shock me good. And on other days it didn't shock me. So I had this hesitation and this mistrust with this stove. And when I got around it, I would try to tap it. And I got to the point where I just didn't want to touch it all until she finally had fixed it. And it got to be that way with my daughter, that when she would come up out of these treatment centers and be like, I'm rock solid, I got this, and this is already the 20th or 30th time of me that's been a rinse and repeat, in my mind I'm going, yeah, right, I'm sure you don't. This is going to happen, and you're going to be back down that beaten path again. And over towards the end, I no longer invested in hope. I just kind of gave up. I didn't think that she was ever going to be serious about getting well and getting back on track until about 2019 or 2020, where my daughter met this other guy in Virginia that he was smoking marijuana, and I'm not a fan of taking anything, but for my daughter, that was a much lesser of the evil. And they were out in Virginia, so she changed people, places, and things. And he had his own cleaning business, and he helped her get on her feet, starting hers. So about 2 or 3 years of her life, she built this cleaning business, and she did fairly well. Now, in that time, did she stay all the way on the up and up? She did not. She used kratom a lot. And she started using it right when she came back from Virginia. She also smoked marijuana. She also drank occasional alcohol. Now, was she nodding out on heroin? No. Was she coming home awake 4 days on methamphetamine? No. Was she drinking for long stretches of a time? No. Was she smoking marijuana 15 times a day? No, she wasn't. For the most part, she thought she was doing whatever she needed to do to manage this imbalance that was in her. And she kept her foot in both sides. She kept one foot in still in trying to socially use all these things that would eventually get her in trouble. And the other foot, she tried to keep in this life of an up and up and a business owner. And she did this for a few years until she finally passed away in April and went back into heavy addiction and died.